Hello, everyone. My name is Ugur Imamoglu from Turkish Historical Society, Ankara, Turkey. The region of today's Çanakkale, namely the Dardanelles or Hellespont with historical name, played significant roles throughout the history. The studies show that life had begun in Dardanelles in 6th millennium BC, and the Dardanelles is a narrow body of water, and at certain points its wideness is only 1 mile. Generally, it's 38 miles long and 1 to 4 miles wide. As a strait between Black Sea or Marmara Sea and Aegean Sea, Dardanelles would be thought as a barrier between Asia and Europe. As examples, the campaign of Xerxes in 5th century BC against the Greek city-states, and also the attack of Alexander the Great to Persia in 4th century BC, clearly signal the importance of this strait. After the Lydian, Persian, Greek, and Roman administrations, Turkish attacks to the region began in 11th century, and Ottoman Turks conquered it in 14th century. From the 15th century on, Dardanelles had greater meaning, especially for Turks, because defending Istanbul was critically related to the defending of Dardanelles. Therefore, after the conquer of Istanbul, the fortification of the region started. Mehmet II built 2 fortresses in the narrowest point of the strait, one in Anatolian side and one in European side. These fortresses were strong and their artillery was effective that they could close the strait to enemy ships. In 17th century, 2 more fortresses were built, again one in European side, named Seddülbahir, Barrier of the Sea, and one in Anatolian side, Kumkale. In following centuries, the fortresses were strengthened and many bastions were built to defend the strait. You know, toward the end of the 19th century, the leading powers in the world had gone into a big rivalry. This rivalry compelled them to establish alliances with different powers in different times. To say, Germany established alliance with Austria-Hungary in Italy. Britain also signed alliance treaty with France in 1904 and with Russia in 1907. With certain changes in time, these alliances constitute the poles, the sides of a world war. After many events, as it is known, the summer of 1914 brought the war. As it was impossible for the Ottoman Empire to escape the war, they also tried to make alliance with those mentioned powers. They tried to join Britain or France firstly, but that could not be possible. Therefore, then, with the intentions of Germans to spread the war to larger areas and with the intention of Turks to compensate its previous losses, Ottoman Empire entered the World War with the side of the Germans and Austria-Hungary. Ottoman Empire, by the way, had to fight against different powers in different fronts. For example, the struggle against the Russians in Caucasus, and also against the Britons and Arabs in the Middle East were keeping the Ottomans busy over a large area. However, that was not all, because the Allied forces had reasons to enlarge the war. British Lord of the Admiralty Winston Churchill advocated an attack to Dardanelles, as it would bring many strategic, diplomatic, military, and economic benefits. After a victorious campaign for them, Istanbul would be under the control of the Allied powers, and the connection of Turks with its European allies in the West would be cut. Accordingly, the Russians in the Caucasus would be relaxed, and the Allied forces would support Russians by passing Istanbul Straits, and the Russian grains will be carried to Europe. According to British military historian General Aspinall Oglander also, in order to overcome the enemy, they needed to reach to Russia, and these all forced them to pass the Dardanelles. Apart from this, there was also a competition between the Britain and the Russians between each other regarding getting the control of Istanbul Straits. whoever would arrive Istanbul first would have great advantage. All these situations resulted in deciding an attack to Dardanelles. For these reasons, the Allies opened the Gallipoli front. They decided to attack with naval forces. The commander of the fleet was British Admiral Carden. The fleet of the Allies included 14 warships, 5 cruisers, 16 destroyers, 1 flat top, 5 submarines, 21 minecrafts from British side, and 4 warships, 6 destroyers, 1 flat top, 2 submarines from French side. That was the mightiest fleet of the time. In Turkish side, on the other hand, Cevat Pasha was the commander. They planted approximately 400 mines in the straits. They also fortified the bastions and fortresses along the Gallipoli Peninsula, Anatolian side, and the straits. The attack of the fleet started on 19 February 1915. They bombarded the south of Gallipoli and Anatolian side of Dardanelles. From February to mid-March, the Allies bombarded, but Turkish fortifications could not be destroyed. On the contrary, Turkish artillery damaged the fleet, and the resistance of Turkish corps was remarkable. On 18th March, the fleet of the Allies launched a huge attack to the straits. The destroyers would demolish Turkish bastions, minecrafts would sweep the mines along the straits, and the fleet would pass from straits to Istanbul. The fleet included 18 warships and they had 250 pieces of artillery. Before the attack, the commander Carden was replaced with Admiral de Robeck. Before the noon, the fleet started heavy bombardment. However, Turkish artillerymen fought bravely and damaged some of the warships. After the noon, French ship Bouvet and British ships Irresistible and Ocean sank after hitting the mines in the straits. The fleet lost an important part of its power and also psychological advantage. They had to retreat. It was the victory of Turks. After the defeats, the Allies understood that only naval force could not be successful in this operation, and they had to carry out an amphibious operation with naval and ground forces. So they started recruiting soldiers from Britain, France, Australia, New Zealand, and other Southern Asia countries. They moved them to Egypt and Lemnos Island for preparations. They were almost 75,000 in the starting. The Turks, on the other hand, established the 5th Army for the defense of Dardanelles. German General Liman von Sanders was appointed the commander. Turkish forces were 6 divisions. On 25th April, the invasion of the Allies started. They mainly focused on west of the peninsula, named Arıburnu, and south, Seddülbahir. There were also fake invasions to various parts. Turkish divisions and brigades also concentrated on Arıburnu and Seddülbahir. The infantry and artillery resisted despite insufficient reinforcement. Mustafa Kemal Atatürk also fought well with his brigade in this campaign. Therefore, the Allies could not get success in this attack. After 25th April invasions, the Allied forces and Turkish troops engaged in constant combats in various parts of the peninsula from April to October. They were mostly trench warfare, and in some parts, the distance between 2 fighting groups were only 10 meters. Therefore, each side of the combat had heavy losses in these bloody combats. But Turks knew that they were fighting for the mainland, and the Dardanelles was the key point that they did not want to give the enemy. They fought and resisted with this motivation. On the other hand, the Allied forces included many soldiers from different countries. They were far from their home, and as time went on and as they could not get success, they were demoralized and disappointed. The public opinion, especially in Britain, started to criticize the campaign. The decision was to be given, either reinforcing with new troops or retreating. The Army Commander General Ian Hamilton was replaced with General Monroe in October. He came and visited the peninsula and saw that they had to retreat, as the winter was coming and the Turks were still resisting with high motivation. 120,000 Allied forces began to retreat in December. In the middle of January, they retreated all the forces from Gallipoli. The campaign lasted 9 months. Both Allied forces and Turkish forces recruited 500,000 soldiers. Turkish side had 100,000 casualties and 150,000 injured soldiers. The Allies also had 60,000 casualties and also 150,000 injured soldiers. The world had seen in Gallipoli one of the bloodiest and the most violent battles of the world history. The battlefield of Gallipoli has been telling its own story for decades. The Battle of Gallipoli is named because of the Gallipoli Peninsula. However, now, today, there are 2 districts in the peninsula. The one in the south is called Eceabat, Maidos in historical name, and the one in the north is called Gallipoli. But the battlefield and historic site today is within the borders of Eceabat. The historic site today includes Eceabat city center and 8 villages. According to statistics, approximately 10,000 people live within the borders of the site. The historic site area is 33,000 hectares. The historic site is located in the opposite of Çanakkale province and 490 kilometers square. In the northern part, Gallipoli district, in the west, Agency and Gökçeada, Imros, in the east, Dardanelles Strait, and in the south, Agency and Bozcaada, Tenedos, are located. The highest point is the hill of Kocaçimen with 305 meters height. The land is generally rugged, and the plains of Anafarta and Ege are the flatlands of the peninsula. After the Republic of Turkey was established, Eceabat was joined to the province of Çanakkale. Several decades later, in 1973, the battlefield was announced as Gallipoli Peninsula Historic and National Park. In 1994, a fire broke out in historic site. As a result, the government took further steps to maintain the historic site. It turned into a peace park that could show the history to visitors openly and also could make socio-economic activities possible for the villagers within the historic site. After that time, the cultural tourism activities in the historic site also increased. In 2040, the government enacted a law establishing a general directorate of Dardanelles War and Gallipoli Historic Site. Today, within the historic site, there are 49 monuments, 44 Turkish martyrdoms, 20 Turkish monuments and inscriptions, 34 foreign cemeteries and monuments, 4 fortresses, 8 bastions, with natural protected areas and archaeological sites. The important places of the battlefield, such as the monuments of martyrs, 57th Infantry Regiment Martyrdom, Kilitbahir and Seddülbahir fortresses, Namazgah and Hamidiye bastions, French Cemetery and Monument, Lone Pine Monument and Anzac Cemetery, Queen's Post Cemetery, and many others are being maintained in their original place and situations according to historical events. As it is mentioned, now a general directorate is responsible for the historic site. The related law states the mission of the directorate as maintaining, developing, promoting, presenting, and administrating the historical, cultural, and spiritual values and natural structure of Gallipoli Historic Site. According to law, it is illegal to erect buildings, to set coal and fuel oil stores, and mining and digging activities within the historic site. The maintenance and protection of the forests and precautions against fires would be carried out jointly with the Ministry of Forest and Water. Residents of the region could perform agricultural activities outside of the archaeological site. However, they have to obey the rules of the Ministry of Food, Agriculture and Farming. Planning and projects on the historic site is also subject to the Directorate. The Directorate is attached to the Ministry of Culture and Tourism. Thus, the restoration activities within the historic site are conducted coordinately with the Ministry. The Directorate is formed of 5 sub-working groups: field planning and project, restoration and construction, field management and promotion, staff and supporting services, and law consultation. All these groups employ its own experts in related fields. To budget its spending, the Directorate has certain incomes. They are the share from the general budget, prices of the services in historic site, operation and activities incomes, promotion and publications, sponsorship and donation. The Directorate is also responsible for annually organized official 18th March and 24 April Remembrance Days. The official representatives from Britain, France, Australia, New Zealand, and many other countries attend these events to commemorate the Gallipoli campaign and their losses. Moreover, the Presentation Center for Çanakkale Legend is an important part of the historic site. The building, with 8,000 meters square area, provides virtual platforms and 3D simulation techniques that portrays the war in several languages. The website of the historic site also serves all around the world. From the website, one can read the publications online, see the promotion videos, and have access to the 360-degree virtual tour of each monument with detailed explanation for each. The Directorate, namely Turkey, is carrying the battlefield to the full extent. Political and legislative actions are taken, scientific methods are applied, and technology is pursued for better applications, as Gallipoli battlefield is sign of the peace and to be maintained very well. Also, UNESCO added it to the cultural heritage list. Before concluding my words, I want to quote the words of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk to Anzac soldiers, Australian New Zealand soldiers, and their mothers after the war was over. Those heroes that shed their blood and lost their lives, you are now lying in the soil of a friendly country. Therefore, rest in peace. There is no difference between the Johnnies and the Mehmets to us, where they lie side by side here in this country of ours. You, the mothers who sent their sons from faraway countries, wipe away your tears. Your sons are now lying in our bosom and are in peace. After having lost their lives on this land, they have become our sons as well. So, the Gallipoli is not only a battlefield, not only a historic site, or not only a museum. But Gallipoli is the symbol of the power of the peace, tolerance, respect, conscience, and humanity. It serves, more than anything else, to encourage the peace in the world between all the people. Thank you.